I'm Shannon. I'm an alcoholic. I guess that's pretty tacky, huh, that I asked to speak. I came here about 4 years ago when my stepfather, Carl Stewart, died for his funeral. And I came here to a meeting, and Taylo spoke. And I was sitting in the back, and I was thinking, like, well, when I move back to Southern Pines, I'm going to speak at the Saturday night meeting in Aberdeen. And I've never had a chance, so that's why I asked to speak tonight. We're leaving on Thursday to move to Boise, Idaho. I don't usually plan what I'm going to say, so I usually think that God will tell me what somebody needs to hear. So if you have any complaints, then you know who to complain to. I grew up here. I grew up on Indiana Avenue in Southern Pines back before it was Charlotte Motor Speedway, and we had a horse farm out on May Street Extension, and my dad died in Vietnam in 1966. My mother was left with 3 kids, and she was pissed off. And I don't know if they drank a lot when I was little. I don't remember any of that, but my older sister tells me that they drank a lot and fought a lot. I don't remember any of that. I remember my father as being this giant, wonderful, kind, warm father, and that's all I remember about him. But my mother often told us that she had no intentions of raising 3 daughters on her own, and that she wasn't very happy about it. And so we would go to the farm and work, and she would start to drink about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and by the time we'd get home, she'd be drunker and she'd be madder. And I think that was poor grammar, but anyway, you get the point. And I learned early on that I needed to shut up and do what I was told, not complain, and when people were angry, to hide. And I spent a lot of my energy, my whole entire life until a few years ago, doing that. I was one of those kids, and I didn't fit anywhere in my mind. And I know that in the last year I've realized that a lot of the things that I heard as a kid, I interpreted them one way. That was my interpretation. That may have never even been what people meant when they said things, but I was super, super sensitive. And I believe that well, my sisters told me when I don't know how old I was, that I had a fat butt, that I would never have a date my entire life, that I was ugly, and I believed those things. My mother told me that I was the chubby child, and I wasn't allowed to eat potatoes or bread at the table, and I believed that. All these messages that I heard, I was just a child, but I believed them. And when other people were adolescents, they were growing up, and they were figuring out that what their sister said was just a lie, or that, their mother was no skinny model on the cover of Vogue and didn't know what, being the chubby kid was. Well, I was also the slow child in the family. And both of my sisters were incredibly brilliant as far as school and able to retain things. My older sister always made straight A's. My younger sister didn't use her intelligence and her energy in the same direction. John's laughing, he knows my sister. He knew me too. But anyway, so I thought I was the slow child. And so all these things that were told to me, I believed them all the way down deep into my heart. So I did go to, they had a class in the 7th and 8th grade back then, and it was called the accelerated class. And both my sisters went, and somehow I went. But I thought that it was an accident, and I didn't think I was as smart as the other kids. So everywhere I went, I just felt different. So I was in that class in the 8th grade, and we had these picnic days in the spring where you'd just hang out and play softball outside all day and have a picnic, and you wouldn't do any school. So one of the girls in my class brought some beer, and she said, we're going to go in the bathroom. We're going to drink this beer at lunchtime, and I was 12. So we went in the bathroom, and I had this great big tall Budweiser, and it was hot, and I chugged that thing, and it was so nasty. And as soon as it got down there and stopped foaming up like it was going to come back up, I felt this feeling like, all of a sudden, I was thin, I was smart, I was pretty, I had a crush on this other guy in the 7th grade, and I just knew that he was going to think I was pretty. Everything was so calm, and I chased that feeling, that little aha feeling that lasts for about maybe 45 seconds for the rest of my drinking life. That couple of seconds of peace. So, anyway, we grew up with these horses. My mother didn't care if you wanted to ride, you rode. She didn't care if you liked outdoors, you were outdoors. So we just did what we did, and I'm grateful for that today. I think that probably those animals probably helped save my life. But it was very easy to, to stay high all the time and to ride the horses out in the woods. So everybody else is growing up, and I am not. I'm just surviving. But I did learn that being angry was a bad thing. The only person allowed to express anger in my family was my mother. And if we were to express anger, then we'd get her anger. And she was very physically violent up until I was a teenager. So I learned that violence is like a regular thing in the household, and I never felt like enough. She used to say, "You never finish anything." And she used to say things like that. And like I said, I took them all in. So anyway, I went to college. She always told me that my father always wanted me to go to college, and he'd left this college money. So I went to NC State, and I was going to be a forest ranger because I could just imagine myself being out in nature and, smoking things that made you commune with nature. And so I went to college, and I went from Pinecrest, and I graduated in 1977. Our whole graduating class was 300 people, and I had an economics class that had 250 people, and the teacher didn't give a crap if you came to class or not. So I went from this little town environment to that, and I made it through a semester, and I got a 1.0 average, and I didn't go back. So then I said, well, I need to go to a smaller school. So I went to St. Andrew's College down in Laurinburg, and that was just full of all these rich children who probably didn't have very good grade point averages, who had a lot of money for recreational activity. And it was a dry county, so we had a lot of recreation. And once again, I got a great 1.0 average, and I said, well, I need to stay in Southern Pines and go to Sand Hills Community College. So I came here, and I don't even think I finished my semester or quarter or whatever it was. So I went to work at a horse farm in Pennsylvania, and I guess when you grow up riding horses, you just imagine that your whole life is going to be that. But unless you're a rider on like an incredible Olympic level or something like that, you're going to shovel horse manure, which doesn't pay very well, and you have to be there at 5 a.m. And when you have a lot of recreational activities until 2 or 3, it's hard to get up at 5. So I went to Pennsylvania to work on this horse farm, and that didn't last very long. So I found myself in Raleigh working in a golden corral, and I don't know if you've ever wondered about how that butter gets in those little cups. Well, somebody does like this all day, which was one of my jobs, that and cutting tomatoes. And I did that for a few months, and I thought, this is not working. I don't want to scoop butter. We would have contests who could scoop the most butter and all of that, but I didn't like wearing polyester and going home.
Excuse me, Shannon.
Yeah.
There's a police officer looking for a Kevin Oldham in the back, if he's here.
Kevin Oldham. He moved
Sorry about that, Shannon.
That's okay. Boy, am I distracted. I don't even know what we're talking about. Someday Steve will tell you about what it's like to be in a meeting and have a policeman come and look for you. But that's not my story. That's his. I'll let him tell you about that. So anyway, the scoop and butter job didn't work, and so I had this brilliant idea that I would join the military. And I had a boyfriend who drank like I did and had recreation like I did, and he had tried to get into the Coast Guard and he couldn't get in, so he went in the Navy. So I thought, well, since he couldn't get in the Coast Guard, I'm gonna go in the Coast Guard, and that's what I did. And I thought, I'll go in there and I'll learn how to have some discipline and I'll have a regular paying job and I'll get all straightened up. So I went to boot camp. I came out of boot camp. I got stationed in Hatteras Inlet. I hadn't been there 24 hours, and I found the people who do just like I do. Lots of recreation back then in the Coast Guard. They didn't have piss tests, and we guarded drug boats that we pulled in full of dope. And so I'm old enough that there was no cable vision out there. There were no VCRs. There were no radio stations. So we just drank and recreated. And it was pretty fun. So I went from there, and I had all these different, I moved every 9 months to a year. I did 4 years of that. My last year I was in Charleston, South Carolina. And we had a little bar. You know how bases will have a bar? The bar was directly under my office. And I'd get off work, and I'd go down there, and mixed drinks were 40 cents a piece. So we would just go straight from work to the bar. And then about 7, I would drive out to Folly Beach where I lived. And I'd have to close one eye to be able to drive. I was 22 at the time. And my drinking was so out of control. Driving in a blackout every single day. At some point, very early on, I started having blackouts. I did not know that was abnormal. Everybody I knew growing up drank. My mom's friends drank. The other kids in the barn drank. Kids in the barn's parents drank. I just thought everybody drank. It was normal to me. And, the recreation, well, we all did that too. Not my mother, but most of us just did that too. So it never occurred to me that I had any problems with drinking. My problem was the boyfriend, and my boyfriend was my friends, and my problem was my friends, and my problem was the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard was causing all my problems. And I started to tell my boss that with lots of words that start with the letter F, which I'm not allowed to say on Saturday night. And I was telling him everything that Coast Guard was doing to my life, and he sent me to a psychiatrist. I went to the psychiatrist, and I told her that I had a passive-aggressive personality disorder, that I'd rather work at McDonald's, and I needed to be discharged. And she said, you do not have a passive-aggressive personality disorder. You're an alcoholic, and you're going to rehab. And I was appalled. Now, most of you that know me know that I was just ending a 90-day blackout when that all happened. That's all really fuzzy to me. But about the week before, I had been running down the middle of a 4-lane highway on James Island in my socks in a blackout. And I did not think I had a problem with alcohol. That's just ridiculous. So anyway, I ended up in rehab, and I got into rehab, and I decided that I would make a go of it, that I would try to stop drinking. Right before I went, I created a whole bunch of drama. I had a boyfriend that I lived with in that 90-day blackout that I did not recognize. We got drunk on the Super Bowl. All I know is the Niners were playing. I don't know who won. If he won, he was going to buy some kind of booze. If I won, I was going to buy some kind of booze. We both bought the booze before the game. And like I said, I have no idea who won. But I do know that I started a 90-day blackout with this guy. And so I was supposed to go to rehab. I went on the wrong day. I had to go home that night and go back the next day. And he had the nerve to have his wife drive up from Florida during the night knowing I was going to be gone. And so I made a big scene, broke out windows, had stitches in my arm, ambulance came, and just the whole drama. So I'm in rehab. I'm watching Father Martin's Chalk Talks. And any of you who've seen them know what I'm talking about. Like you're shaking and wanting to puke, and he's up there drawing, you know, what alcohol does and the craving and all that stuff. But there was no denying it. Like the gig was up. I just punched out a bunch of windows in a drunken drama case, and my mother had told me that not to call her anymore unless I had something nice to say. So what I didn't tell you is that when I was 16, my mother had a date with Carl Stewart, who had been sober for a year. And they started dating, and she started going to AA. She didn't stop drinking, but I think she did control her drinking. But she would go to AA with him, and they'd go to conventions, and they'd have a great time. So I imagine she heard somewhere around AA about, like, not letting your alcoholic children terrorize your life. So she had told me, I don't want you to call me unless you have something nice to say. So I called her because I was going to be locked up for 30 days. And I told her, you know, Mom, I'm going to alcohol rehab. And she said, oh, that's the best news I have heard in a long time. And I did not know what she was talking about. But for her, that was the first time in a really long time that she didn't have to be afraid of where I was going to be at night, whether I was going to get hit by a car or run over somebody, because I did love to drive. And I'm one of those drivers that when I have recreation, I drive better stoned than I do sober. And I know there's some of you out there that are like that. And I would certainly have told you about that. I was a designated drunken driver. So, and I've been stopped many, many times and talked my way out of it. So that was another good reason to be the designated drunken driver. So anyway, I went to treatment, and I came out, and I actually decided to stay sober. And I stayed sober for almost 9 years, or almost 10 years. I was 9 years and something. And during that time, I went to nursing school. I got married. What else did I do? I got stationed in Texas. So I'm in Texas. I think I had about maybe like 7 years sober. Now, during this time sober, in Charleston, I loved AA. I went to meetings. But when I didn't work any steps. You didn't hear any steps in there, did you? Or sponsor or any of those words. But I did love the fellowship. So moved to Texas, and I went to a couple meetings in clubhouses, and I said, AA is not the same in Texas. It's just not the same. I didn't feel good there. I didn't feel welcome. You know how we are in the South and everybody welcomes you? Well, in those clubhouses, in some of the big ones, like there were in Texas, there wasn't really any of that. There were places that were open 24 hours a day. They had a grill in there where they made burgers, and people would just stay in there all the time. So I had been there about a year, and I had a really super hard job. My degree's in nursing. So I had a really super hard nursing job. And at that time in Texas, you could drink and drive, but you couldn't drive drunk. So they had these tacasitas, and they had drive-through windows where you could get dollar margaritas. That seemed like the most brilliant thing ever to me. And so I'd hardly been to a meeting for about a year. I'm driving around, and I think, I'm going to go and get one of those margaritas at Takasita. They only cost $1. So I was going to do that, and I didn't. I went home, and I said, I have to do something. I have to go to a meeting. I have to find a meeting. So I got the phone book out. I called AA. I said, I need a meeting in a church. I need a meeting, not in a club, in a church. So amazingly enough, there were only 3 million people that live there. There were a lot of meetings. There were a lot of meetings in my neighborhood, in churches. So that's I went, and I stayed sober. So then I went from there, and my mother got lung cancer. So I got a humanitarian transfer to North Carolina to Seymour Johnson, and she actually died before I got here. So I thought that they would stop my transfer, but they didn't. So I got stationed in Seymour Johnson. At that time, this was in 1990, 1989, 90, 91. It was still a pretty small town, and it was still, anybody in here from Goldsboro? It was still really, really redneck, and there were very few women in there. Now these are all excuses, because if you want to get sober, you can get sober anywhere. But these were my excuses. There were very few women, and that's the truth. Very few women. It was still extremely racial, and women were kind of like, what is that saying? I drank more than you ever spilled, and that kind of thing. So I didn't go to AA very often. And then I got sent to the first Gulf War, and I went to the desert. There were people there who went to AA, and they said, hey, we have these meetings over in these tents over here, and I didn't want to go. And I was doing really great on my own. I didn't need God. I was in the middle of a war zone. I was jumping in and out of the bunker, but I didn't need God. I was doing great. And then I started drinking that non-alcoholic beer, because in Saudi Arabia you're not allowed to drink. So that non-alcoholic beer is for non-alcoholics. Just tell you that right now, because I started drinking it, and boy, I just really liked that. I thought that's really awesome. When I get back to the States, I'm going to drink that non-alcoholic beer. So we got on a plane to come back. We stopped in Spain, and some guys went over to the Class 6 store, and they bought 12 packs of Miller in the bottle, like the tall neck kind of bottle. And they set them on the table, and somebody opened one and handed it to me, and I drank it. I had over 9 years without a drink. My mother was dead. While I was in the desert, my husband took the money and ran. And so those were my two biggest, what do you want to call it? They were my two biggest things that kept me from drinking. I did not want to disappoint my mother. And then my husband knew how I drank, so I wasn't, But he left, and so no one knew how I drank. And one of my good friends, I told her, I used to go to AA a long, long time ago, but I was really young. So anyway, I picked up this beer, and I drank it. And I did not give one single thought to the fact that I was a blackout drinker, that I had lived with a guy for 3 months and didn't recognize him. I told myself I was just young. I was 22 years old when I came in AA. I was just immature. And look how much I had grown up, and I had been through a war. And I hadn't even needed to pray. So I went home, and I didn't have a blackout for 2 weeks. And the other thing that I did not tell you was that I was an officer. That when I was in the Coast Guard, I was enlisted, but when I went through college and went back in, I was an officer in the Air Force. And we weren't supposed to drink and do other things with enlisted people, because we were supposed to be the leaders, and we weren't supposed to do all that. So 2 weeks later, I'm puking off the side of somebody's porch, and I'm the only officer there at a party. And it didn't even occur to me that, oh my gosh, yeah, I really do have a problem with alcohol. So that started off like several years of drinking. And I used to say drinking never affected my work. Now, I've said this many times up until the last time I came in, but at that time, I was staying out all night long, partying with pilots, and going to work to deliver babies and getting on the gurney in the back hallway and sleeping all day while everybody else did all the work. And I would tell you that drinking was not affecting my work, and believe it. From there, I got transferred to California, and I forgot to tell you, in there I got married again. But he was my 10-month husband. He was not alcoholic. And sometimes I don't count that marriage because it was only for 10 months. But he did not know what was coming. He didn't see me coming. He had no idea about alcoholism. He had no alcoholism in his family. His parents were good, decent people who didn't drink at all. And he drank socially, could take it, leave it. But we got married, and then I did not like that. He didn't drink like I did. He could not understand why I would want to be out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning while he was at home sleeping. And I couldn't see why he was such a pud, wanted to sleep all the time. He was boring. So that didn't last, and I went to California. As soon as I got to California, I found a guy that drank just like me, and even worse. And also, during that time in the military, I had to leave all the recreational stuff because they had urinalysis tests. And so I hadn't been doing any recreational stuff in a long time. So this boyfriend that I had apparently did crank, which I had never done because they didn't have it back when I was still recreating. And so I didn't know that behavior. Those of you who've done it know that behavior, like where you shut the blinds and you're paranoid and somebody's going to get you and your girlfriend's cheating and everybody's out to get you. And so he would be like drunk, reasonable drunk, and then he'd be like shutting the blinds. Where have you been? Who have you been with? Just like crazy. And he was physically violent, but I grew up with physical violence, so I tolerated that. And I would have always said to you when I was in the military, if any guy ever touches me, I will kick his butt. But I didn't. I allowed it. And I isolated, and I didn't tell anybody about it. So at some point, that had to end because it was getting worse and worse. And so he moved out, and I started going to AA. And then he moved back in, and then he started whacking me around because I was going to AA. And so I still tolerated that. And then he left, and he would come and go and come and go. And I had about 90 days, and he came for the weekend, and he broke my arm, and he left. And so at that time, I had to really make a decision about him and what I was going to do. And I really started working at being sober. And I worked really hard at being sober. I had a sponsor. She was a big book thumper. And I had always said, I hate that effing book. And she was my sponsor, and you did not ever say that. We read the book. And it was the first time I'd ever read the book. Now, this was in 1994 or 95. The first time I got sober was 1982. I had never read the book, any of it, except what they read in the meetings. So we read the book. I worked the steps, did really well. Met another guy in AA, got married again. And not as many times as John, though. Y'all know how many times he's been married. I'm not telling on him. But anyway, so we went into, like married, sober bliss, except he hated AA. I never figured that out. I guess I wasn't listening. He drank, then I drank, and here we go again, the whole relapse. So after several years of this, I decided I wanted to get sober, and lots of bad things had been happening. So it's kind of a long story. I had to move in and out and in and out and in and out a bunch of times, drunk, sober. Never made it more than 6 months during that time. And so I told him, I must have had at the time like maybe 90 days or something. I said, I'm moving out. You get sober for 6 months, and I'll come back. So he did that, and I came back, and 2 weeks later, he's drunk as a skunk, and I left for the final time, and I I think that was, I don't even know what month that was, but I had my last drink on January 2nd of 2002. I got sober and I made a conscious decision to not have a relationship for a long time because I did go to therapy. I'm one of those people who needed outside help, still get outside help. And she told me that I picked the same person in different skin over and over and over. And I said, well, how do you do that? How do you not do that? And she said, you look for flags. You look for behavior that you don't like. She said, you don't even know what you want. And I didn't know what I wanted. If you were nice to me, you needed a job, you needed a car, you live with your mother, I'll marry you. And that is not a great way to start a relationship. But it's funny, but I did not know what a relationship was. I based it on my life as a child and my drunken relationships that I had. So I took time out and I worked on myself and I worked on getting sober. And I had a final drink and then I stopped drinking and I've been sober since that time. So during that time, I was in the Air Force. I got out of the Air Force. And I started travel nursing and doing some other stuff. I was going to come back here. And I went in the reserves, became a flight nurse. And I had a difficult time flying, not drinking, because flyers love to drink. And you go out of town, nobody knows what you're doing, everybody misbehaves. So I had a hard time with that. So I didn't continue to do that. But I met my husband. Those of y'all that know us, which just about everybody knows, we met at an AA dance. And it was at, I had told God I wouldn't have a date for 2 years. It was at the 18-month mark. And he gave me his phone number, and I took it. And he was cute and he was nice. Did not live with his mother, had a car, and had a job that he loved, which I don't think I'd ever heard anybody say, I love my job. But Steve had some unfinished business with a girlfriend, and that's his story. I'm not going to tell you about that. And he said to me, well, we could just stay friends, email, stuff like that. I said, no, I'm not interested in that. I have lots of friends. And now I'm telling you that those words came right out of God's mouth because I was not a mature person that could say, no, I'm not interested in that. I have enough friends. I was like the Klingon that you should run. But I said that, and 6 months later he called me, and we started on a date. We had a date, and we've been kind of together ever since. But I don't want to talk about all that. I want to talk about, I went back into the Air Force on active duty. I got stationed here. Steve and I made a decision to go back on active duty because we knew there was going to be a big price. We knew I'd have to go to Afghanistan. We knew it would be kind of fast-paced, but the economy wasn't very good, and I had not really planned for retirement, and all those years of drinking, I just didn't think about that. Steve had planned for retirement, but I had never thought about health insurance or any of that kind of stuff, and I was getting a little bit older. I was thinking about that. So Steve and I made a decision to do that, and when I came here for Carl Stewart's funeral, and I looked around, and I had fantasized North Carolina into Shangri-La in my mind all those years I was other places. And I thought that I was kind of like making it up and fantasizing. And when I came here and I looked around, I said, it's really like that. It's really like I remember, and people are still friendly. And trust me, people in some parts of the country are not friendly like they are here. So I went back and I told Steve, I said, well, I want to get stationed at Pope. Pope has a reputation for being the most horrible place to be a flight nurse because you go to Afghanistan all the time. But the other choices weren't great either, and so we talked about it and decided to come here. And so you guys also know that I came here and I was here I can't remember all the dates, but I wasn't here very long. Steve was still in California getting the house ready. My household goods just arrived. I went into, the colonel called me into her office. I went in her office and she said, you have 9 days, you're going to Afghanistan, go pack. So I called Steve. I'm like, Steve, I'm going to Afghanistan in 9 days. And he's like, okay, I'll jump in the car, I'll drive out there. So he came out here, and 3 days later, I went to Afghanistan. I had no idea what to expect. I had no additional training when I arrived here to get me ready to go there. I asked the flight nurse who takes everything but the kitchen sink what to take, and she told me, and I had these huge bags. You have to carry all your own gear. I had one bag weighed 90 pounds. So I have this poor guy who's going with me who doesn't know me, who's helping me drag my 90-pound bags and all my stuff and my 5 months worth of hair products and all that stuff. And thank God he was a nice guy because he helped me. But nurses are notorious for taking too much stuff, and the average person would say, you carry your own stuff. You bring it, you carry it. But anyway, he helped me. And so I was so unprepared, and I was old, like, I'm really old to be a flight nurse, unless you look in the reserves. But for active duty, I'm pretty old to be a flight nurse. So I get to Afghanistan, and I get to Manas, which is in well, it's kind of like on the edge of Russia, and it's 20 below, and there's all this snow, and they give me this huge flak vest, and it pulls over your head, and your little arms go out, and then you're like this. It weighed 45 pounds. I have my 90-pound bag. I have a little backpack that weighs about 50 pounds. I have all this stuff. And they're like, hurry, we got to get to plane. So I got all my stuff. I can't breathe. And I fall in the snow like this. 50-year-old woman, you know. There's a 20-year-old smart-ass, Air Force dude laughing. And I'm like, hey, can you help me get up? So he helps me get up. But that was like how prepared I was for what I did. But Steve came to town. He didn't know where the gas station was. He didn't know where the grocery store was. I had a really great friend here that he met and made some friends through them. I had Ashley is my stepsister, those of you that know Ashley. Neil is we haven't really figured it out, but she's like my stepmom, sort of. And he knew where a meeting or two was. And everyone here just took him in and helped him out and showed him where things were and became his friend. And when I came back, he knew way more people than I had ever known in town. And he said, you got to go to Vass. That's my home group. That's the best meeting. So I went to Vass, and y'all, that is great. If you're looking for a home group, it's where all the cool people go. And it is an excellent group. But so I was home for a little while, went back to Afghanistan, got myself a really good case of PTSD. Came home, went on another deployment, and got sent home early. And so a year ago this time, I was in treatment for PTSD in Salt Lake City. I was really, really messed up. I had depression that was so terrible, I felt like I couldn't move. I had, if any kind of noise went off, I'd leap out of the chair. I'd be sitting over on the wall, and there'd be a noise in the parking lot. I'd leap out of the chair. I cried and cried and cried and cried. And you guys just loved me through it. I never wanted to drink. I never took a drink during that time. I just knew if I just hung in there that it would get better. So there was a couple things I want to tell you that I learned about from all of this and from the PTSD and being here is that my whole life I thought there's something wrong with me, that I wasn't as good as other people. And when I went to PTSD treatment, they had us write a list about who we thought we were. And I said that I was weak, that I was not smart enough to be in the Air Force, that there was something wrong with me, that other people could go to Afghanistan over and over and over and see people blown up and it not bother them. What else was on that list? I would never be able to be like other people. That's something I used to always say. I'm never going to be like other people. I had this whole list of things. It was all old ideas, wrong ideas that started back from when I was a kid, and I thought that I wasn't good enough, and I was never going to have a boyfriend because I had a fat butt, and I was, all that stuff that I took and put in my heart as being the truth, I still felt at 50-something years old. And so through the work that I've done, and from being in treatment, and from coming here and being able to share with you, is that I don't feel that way. I am not dumb. I had such terrible memory, and I was losing things and forgetting things that I got psychologically tested because I thought I had dementia and Alzheimer's disease, and I don't. I am forgetful. I have that ADD thing, attention deficit, but I'm actually highly intelligent. I just can't get in touch with it very often, but I am intelligent. And I was the dumb kid. I was the one that wasn't smart enough. Out of the 3 girls, I was the slow one. I know that I can finally look in a mirror and see what I look like. I remember the first Gulf War, I stood in front of the mirror, I weighed 120 pounds, which is a lot less than I weigh right now, and I saw a fat person. So I know that I am okay, like I am, and this body is okay. I am not weak. Weak people don't go in the Air Force and go to Afghanistan. They don't even go in the Air Force. Sometimes I still have that, I know it in my head, but it's not in my heart, but it's getting there. And that's, sometimes I could tell you I know the truth, but I can't get it from my head into my heart. And the only thing I know to do about that is to talk about it, to come here, to share it, to feel the love from you guys. Because I was in with a group of women one day, and I was sitting and I was like this. And she took her hand and she put it on my hand and my leg, and she pushed down. I didn't even know I was doing all this. And she said, just breathe, just breathe. Well, people loved me even though I was acting like a nutcase. And so all those old ideas, all those things that have been torturing me my whole life are letting up. They're easing up. And I know that I'm actually very courageous. Now I'm saying that on my mouth. My heart's like, really scaredy cat. But I know I'm courageous because I went and I did the deal. And my sponsor, who has 45 years sober, 44 years in a sober, nonviolent relationship, told me that the reason that she believes that my heart got so hurt in Afghanistan is because you guys have taught me to have an open heart. You guys have told me to tell the truth, to really look at how I feel, to have my feelings open. And so I lost the ability to just stuff everything and turn my back and not care. And so in AA, my past becomes my greatest asset. But I have to guard where I put myself in this life. And I don't have to go to Afghanistan anymore, and I'm really grateful for that. I don't want to go anymore. I've done my share. So I think that's all I have to tell you, but I owe it all from you guys. And as far as what I know for sure about my sobriety is I have to go to meetings. I have to live the steps in my life outside the rooms, which is the hardest place. And I think that drinking is a choice, and I have to make that choice not to drink every day. For me today, it's easy because I have all y'all. If I drink, I have me. That's it, in my little cave that I go in. So for me, it's an easy choice. Thank you guys for helping me stay sober.